All over North America, traditional churches are dying. Young people are leaving for contemporary churches or no church at all. The saints who remain are aging. Funerals outnumber baptisms. But this is a story of hope. The story of a traditional, mainline congregation that has found a way to grow again without giving up its traditions. They've kept their hymns, their liturgy, and their stained glass. You won't find a drum set in this church. What you will find is men. My name is David Murrow, and I'm the director of Church for Men. The research is clear. The more active men you have in your church, the more likely it is to be growing. That's what's happening at Grace United Methodist Church in LaSalle, Illinois, a town of about 10,000 in the heart of corn country. Grace is a typical mainline church. Founded in the 1800s, peaked in the 1960s, and caught in a slow decline ever since. But in 2003, help arrived in an unexpected form.
Good morning. Welcome to Grace United Methodist Church in LaSalle, Illinois. We are so glad you are here.
The Reverend Dr. Jennifer Wilson was determined to breathe new life into her congregation without abandoning the traditions of her church.
We are a typical Methodist church. We have our name, Grace United Methodist Church. We didn't shy away from being a United Methodist church. We actually embraced United Methodism. Typically on a Sunday you can have 3 hymns, liturgy. We write our own liturgy. Often we'll have the offertory, doxology. This sanctuary was built in 1969. The windows tell the story, beautiful stained glass windows, pews. It has the look of a traditional United Methodist church. We do not have a praise band. We use our organ and piano. It just depends on how the mix is and what the music and content is of the day. We are averaging a little over 300 every week in worship. We're typical in a lot of ways, but in a lot of other ways we're not typical United Methodist at all.
Now that's an understatement. Grace United Methodist is growing by about 10% a year. Giving has doubled in the last 10 years. Grace's median age is 42, compared to 57 in the rest of the denomination. The church is chock full of children. And most surprising of all, in a denomination that's almost 2/3 female, Grace United Methodist has more men than women attending worship and participating in the ministries of the church. How have they accomplished all this?
A couple years ago, I ordered a book called Why Men Hate Going to Church. And there have been few books other than the Bible that have had that huge of impact on my personal life, because it changed how I thought about who is sitting in the congregation on a Sunday. And if I wanted more active families, I knew that in order to engage the men, we had to do things differently. We had to create an environment where men would feel comfortable, not repelled, the minute they walked in the door. And I started to make changes here at Grace. Slow, gentle, easy changes, but I think it made the environment much more friendly toward men. I write my own liturgy. So I began to look at liturgy through the eyes of a bricklayer, a mechanic, a local farmer. And I began to use imagery that would resonate with them.
That firefighter would not abandon him.
I changed my sermon topics. I'm a series preacher. So in January, I decided to preach on sex. I think preachers generally would rather preach about tithing than sex, but I began to talk about sex more freely. I began to do series that were more appropriate to guys, and they loved it. I found a lot of songs in the United Methodist hymnal that are overtly feminine. The images, the language, the cadence, everything about them. We won't sing those songs. I might sing them in a group of women, but I would never really sing them in a mixed congregation. One of the things I found in the book was to be careful about homemade items or items that looked overtly feminine. About 4 months ago, we took down the felt banners that were in the sanctuary. It was not an easy decision because these banners were actually made by members of the congregation. But once we explained to them the direction we were headed, they were all on board. The interior walls of the church were pink and beige. So last summer, we chose a more natural palette, colors that are more friendly to a guy space. We also use images, we have a projection system. So we cut flowers, soft pinks, lavenders, and went toward a more natural setting, mountains, rivers, because that type of imagery makes everybody feel comfortable, and I think it's very inviting to men to go into that next level of worship. We didn't announce that we were going to be somehow man-friendly, but we made subtle changes over time. Even though we've made all these changes, I don't think the men perceive this as like an overtly masculine church, but they love their church. They bring their friends. Every week we have new men and bringing their friends from work, bringing their friends, their buddies, and their sons.
I think it's an excellent church for men.
Compared to my old church, massive amounts of men, especially those that are active.
Yes, there are a lot of men in this church, and they are as open as the women.
I grew up in a Baptist church, and we had a sampling of men, but it seems like the women were always the motivators behind it. Whereas here, the men are self-motivated. They want to do what they're doing. They want to step up.
The men are great leaders. They're very open, very friendly.
It's a very good church to be a man in. You can just be yourself.
Fair warning, if you bring more men into your church, you're also going to see more women and children. And that's going to create a wonderful problem.
So here is basically our sanctuary and the narthex, and this used to be a wall here. We had to take out this wall and convert the narthex area for more seating because we have so many people coming in for worship. Now we're even talking about putting in a third service on Sunday mornings because we have to get people in and out, and we're going through a rapid expansion in the last 6 months. It's just been great, but a new problem.
The church has grown exponentially in numbers, in missions, in ministries.
Well, all the way from California.
And because there's so many kids coming here now, and we're running out of room, so we got to make room.
Say this all in God's name, and all God's children said, Amen. Thank you, boys and girls.
It's not that we're leaving women out of the picture, but we do understand that reaching men is a critical part of a growth in the church. It's like a whole group of people in our society are sidelined, and the minute you engage them, not only do you engage the men, you engage the family, you engage the generations with them. We're seeing lives really changed, marriages being saved, families being stronger, men being leaders, fathers being leaders.
God has touched Dean a great deal in the last 3 years. We talk openly and honestly.
In the last several years, he's become more involved in the church. I've seen a change in him. He's more understanding. He's more forgiving.
It has touched him greatly.
I was away from the church for about 25 years, and on this past Easter Sunday, it was my first time attending Grace.
Things have just totally turned around.
My wife will tell you, there's a change in Dave. He's not the rough-nosed, the mean guy, he's none of that anymore, you know.
We pray together at night as husband and wife, and that just brings us closer.
I'm not scared to hold my wife's hand, to reach over and tell her that I love her. Sitting in church today, I have my arm around my wife and my son. This is the first time my son's been here.
And today, a 21-year-old son said to me, "I like the changes I see in my father. I am closer to him now than I have ever been, and it's because he's coming to this church."
Jesus began his ministry with a core of 12 enthusiastic men. The original church growth strategy still works today. To learn how your church can reach more men, visit churchformen.com.